She gave him a toy bear, and the CEO turned pale. Instantly, the lobby of the Sterling Enterprises building gleamed with polished marble and chrome. Everyone moved with purpose, heels clicking, voices murmuring, phones ringing. At the center of it all stood Damian Sterling, the famously unshakable CEO, striding through his empire with the ease of a man who had conquered every obstacle. Known for his cold precision and ruthless business sense, Damian was the type of man who didn't blink in boardrooms or bow to sentiment. But that morning, everything changed. As he stepped into the elevator, checking his watch with his usual detachment, a small voice called out behind him, "Sir, wait!" He turned, impatient. A little girl, no older than 6, ran toward him, her curls bouncing, her cheeks flushed with excitement. In her tiny hands, she clutched a worn-out toy bear, the kind with one button eye and frayed stitching. Damian frowned. "Where are your parents?" But the girl just smiled and extended the bear. "This is for you." The elevator doors began to close, but something in Damian froze. His hand reached out instinctively, stopping them. He bent slightly to meet her eye level, his brows narrowing. "Why would you give this to me?" The girl tilted her head, still smiling. "Because Mommy said it was yours once. She told me to give it to the man with the serious face who works in the big tower." For a moment, the chaos of the lobby disappeared. Damian stared at the bear, his breath caught halfway. He reached out slowly, his hand trembling, a rare sight for a man like him. The moment his fingers touched the faded plush, his eyes widened. That bear, that exact bear, it had been his, not a copy, not a coincidence. It was the one he had as a child, the one he had cried over when it went missing the day after his mother vanished. He had searched everywhere, clutched his tiny fists, sobbed until his throat was raw. No one ever explained, no one ever found it. Until now. He looked at the girl again, stunned. "What's your name?" "Lily," she said cheerfully. "Mommy says I look just like her when she was little." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Who's your mother?" The girl opened her mouth to answer, but before she could speak, a woman's voice rang out sharply from the other end of the lobby. "Lily, come back here!" Damian turned his head just in time to see a woman, mid-30s, elegant, haunted eyes, rush toward them. When she saw him, she froze. Her skin drained of color, lips parting slightly. Damian stared back at her. Recognition hit him like a tidal wave. Her. It was her. And she was holding his gaze with the same guilt he never understood. The woman approached slowly, her steps hesitant, as if every inch she closed between them pulled her deeper into a moment she'd spent years dreading. Damian's fingers tightened around the bear, its worn fabric now soaked with the sweat of his palm. People passed by, oblivious to the silent storm brewing between them. "Hello, Damian," she said finally, her voice soft but resolute. "It's been a long time." Her name rose unbidden in his mind. Rachel. The name tasted bitter, like something too long buried clawing its way back to the surface. She had been more than just a childhood friend. They'd grown up together on the same cul-de-sac. She had been the last person he saw the night his mother disappeared, and then suddenly she was gone too. "You," he said, his voice low and charged. "Where the hell have you been?" She glanced at Lily, who was now clinging to her leg, sensing the tension. Rachel placed a hand on her daughter's head gently. "Let's not do this here." Damian's eyes didn't leave hers. "Where should we do this? You vanished 25 years ago, and now your daughter is handing me a bear that disappeared the night my life fell apart. You don't get to walk away again." She exhaled shakily. "There's so much you don't know." "I've spent my life not knowing." Security approached cautiously, unsure whether to intervene. Damian waved them off. He wasn't letting this moment slip into bureaucracy. "My office," he said, turning toward the elevator. "Now." Rachel hesitated, then nodded. They rode in silence. Damian stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched so tightly it ached. Rachel watched the floor numbers rise. Lily clutched the hem of her mother's coat, watching Damian with curious eyes that mirrored his own. Once inside his corner office, with the city sprawling behind them through the massive windows, Damien closed the door and turned to face her. "Start talking." Rachel sat on the edge of the couch, placing Lily beside her. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this, but she wanted to give it to you. She's been asking questions about her father." Damien's heart thudded painfully. "Her what?" Rachel looked at him, her eyes glossy. "Her father. Damien. She's yours." The words punched through the air like a cannon blast. The room tilted. The bear slipped from his fingers and landed soundlessly on the carpet. He took a step back, as if distance could somehow make the truth less real. "That's not possible." Rachel's voice cracked. "I was scared. I was young. Your family. Your father never wanted me around. He made it clear I'd never be welcome, so I left. I thought I was protecting her. And you." Damien's face was blank, but his eyes were wild. He looked at Lily again, really looked this time. The eyes, the shape of her chin, that subtle arch of the brow. She was his mirror, and his world had just been turned upside down. Damien turned away, walking to the window as if the skyline could offer answers. The memory of his father loomed large in his mind, cold, commanding, a man who ran their house like a corporation. There was no room for softness, no space for teenage love, certainly no tolerance for a girl like Rachel from the wrong side of town. He remembered their fights, the late nights he sneaked out to meet her, the arguments when his father found out, the ultimatum, the disappearance. He had believed she left by choice. "You could have told me," he muttered, voice low. "I wanted to," Rachel said, "but every time I thought about calling, I remembered the night I left. Your father's driver showed up at my doorstep with money and a warning. He said if I ever came near you again, there would be consequences." Damien turned sharply. "You let him decide?" Rachel stood now, trembling. "I was 17, Damien, pregnant, alone. Your family had power I couldn't fight, and he made it very clear what would happen if I tried." He stared at her, chest heaving. "He's dead now." "I know." Lily tugged on Rachel's sleeve, whispering, "Mommy, is he mad?" Rachel knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "He's just surprised, that's all." Damien watched them, a wave of emotion he didn't know how to name rising in his chest. Anger, yes, betrayal, certainly, but also grief, for the time lost, for the moments that never happened, for birthdays missed and lullabies never sung. "How old is she?" he asked. 6, Rachel replied. "Born in December." He did the math automatically. 6 years, 9 months after the last time he saw her. It lined up. "She looks like you," Rachel added gently. "Same stubborn brow, same look when she's thinking hard." "She looks like me," Damien echoed, almost to himself. Rachel nodded. "She's smart too, loves books, already reading at a 3rd grade level." Damien sat down slowly, trying to steady himself. "Why come now? Why bring the bear?" Rachel hesitated. "She found it in a box last week. She asked who it belonged to. I told her the truth. She insisted on finding you. I didn't think she'd actually sneak it into her backpack and make me come here." "She came here on her own?" Rachel smiled faintly. "I was dropping off documents for a legal client on the 2nd floor. I told her to sit and wait. When I turned around, she was gone." He shook his head in disbelief, then looked at the bear again. It sat on the table like a ghost from another life. He picked it up slowly, holding it with reverence. Then his eyes lifted to Rachel's. "I want to know her," he said. "You don't get to say no." Rachel swallowed, nodding. "I know." He leaned back, but just as he was about to speak again, the office phone rang, and the name on the screen made the blood drain from his face. Jonathan Sterling, his father's old lawyer. Why would he be calling now? Damien stared at the name glowing on the screen. It was impossible. Jonathan Sterling had retired 5 years ago after his father's funeral, quietly, without fuss, just like the man he had worked for. They hadn't spoken since. The phone continued to ring, each chime sharp as a dagger. He snatched it off the hook. "Jonathan," he said, voice guarded. "Damien," came the gravelly voice on the other end. "We need to talk, in person. Today." Damien narrowed his eyes. "I'm in a meeting. This can't wait. It's about your father. And something he left behind. Rachel straightened at the sound of those words. Damien's jaw tightened. "My father's been dead for almost 6 years," he said slowly. "What could possibly be urgent now?" There was a pause. Then Jonathan's voice dropped an octave. "Because I've received instructions to deliver a sealed document. Your father arranged for it to be opened only when someone, specifically a child, matching a certain description entered the building." Damien went still. "What description?" "A 6-year-old girl, with dark curls, and a toy bear in her hand." Rachel covered her mouth. Lily looked between them, puzzled. "I'll be there in 10 minutes, Damien said, and hung up. He turned to Rachel, who had gone pale. "Did you tell anyone you were coming here?" She shook her head. "No. No one knew. I didn't even plan to come upstairs." He grabbed his coat, motioning for her and Lily to follow. "Come on, we're going to Jonathan's." They rode in silence again, the air in the elevator thick with tension. Rachel held Lily's hand tightly. Damien's mind raced. What kind of message had his father left behind? The man had been controlling, cruel, and brilliant. And if he had gone to such elaborate lengths for a posthumous message, it couldn't be anything good. Jonathan's office was in a quiet part of the city, tucked into a brownstone surrounded by ivy. When they entered, he was already standing by the fireplace, a leather case in his hands. "You brought them," he said, nodding at Rachel and Lily. He looked older, frailer, but his eyes were sharp. "Then it's time." Damien approached the desk as Jonathan unlocked the case and pulled out a thick envelope sealed in red wax, bearing the Sterling family crest. Jonathan placed it before Damien. "Your father wrote this 6 months before his death. He was very specific. I was to give it to you only when this child appeared." Damien picked up the envelope, breaking the seal with a snap. Inside was a letter. As he unfolded it, he felt Rachel move closer, her breath shallow. He began to read. His father's handwriting was unmistakable, precise, cold, commanding. "If you are reading this, it means the girl I spent years trying to keep away has returned, and that the blood I worked so hard to bury has found its way back to you." Damien's hands trembled. He read on. "You need to know the truth, about Rachel, about your daughter, and about what I did to keep them apart." He looked up at Jonathan. "He knew?" Jonathan nodded. "He always knew." And that was only the beginning. Damien continued reading, each word slicing deeper than the last. His father's confession was not just a recount of actions, it was a meticulous documentation of control, manipulation, and betrayal. The letter detailed how, upon discovering Rachel's pregnancy, the elder Sterling orchestrated everything: the bribe, the threats, even a falsified report declaring she had left the country. Damien had never known. Every time he asked, he was told she'd moved on. He'd believed it until now. "I did it because I saw your future, Damien," the letter read. "A future too important to be derailed by sentiment or scandal. You were meant to lead, not be tied to a girl with nothing, but I underestimated blood. It always finds a way." Damien's vision blurred. He clenched the letter in his fist. "He lied to me. About everything." Rachel looked at him, pain in her eyes. "I tried to protect you from him. From what he'd become. But I should have fought harder. I should have told you sooner." He looked at her, so many emotions battling in his chest: grief, rage, guilt. Then his eyes fell on Lily, who was sitting quietly on the arm of the leather chair, hugging the bear close, her eyes watching him with a strange mixture of curiosity and caution. Jonathan stepped forward. "There's more." He opened a small side drawer in the leather case and pulled out a smaller envelope, this one with Damien's name and the word "private" written across it. "What is that?" Damien asked, his voice strained. Jonathan hesitated. "It's a second letter, written for when you decided what to do next." Rachel frowned. "What does that mean?" Jonathan met Damien's eyes. "Your father made arrangements, a trust fund, property. But only if you agreed to raise the child as your own, and sever all ties to her mother. The room went silent. Rachel's lips parted in disbelief. He gave you a choice, me or her. Damien's hands curled into fists. Even from the grave, he's trying to control me. Rachel stepped back, her voice breaking. You wouldn't consider that, would you? He looked at her, torn. The weight of the past, the choices before him, it all crashed down like a tidal wave. He looked at Lily again. Her small face was innocent, untouched by the storm around her. I need time, he said quietly, to think, to understand what this means. Rachel's expression crumbled. She nodded slowly, then knelt to Lily's level. Come on, sweetheart, let's go. Lily glanced back at Damien, her eyes searching his face. Will I see you again? Damien opened his mouth, but no words came out. Rachel took her daughter's hand and turned to leave. As the door clicked shut behind them, Damien stood alone in the silence, the letter trembling in his grasp, the weight of fatherhood and legacy pressing on his shoulders like a mountain he never asked to climb. Rachel didn't speak a word on the cab ride home. Lily sat beside her, swinging her legs, still clutching the bear. She had a million questions behind her eyes, but somehow she sensed her mother wasn't ready to answer them. Rachel stared out the window, watching the city blur past, her mind spiraling through regrets and what-ifs. She hadn't planned for this. She hadn't planned for him, Damien, to still feel so raw, so present in her bones. And yet, there he was, the father of her child, caught between the ghost of his father and the weight of a daughter he never knew he had. When they arrived at the apartment, Rachel locked the door behind them and leaned against it, her knees weak. The truth was out now. No more hiding, no more pretending. But that didn't make it easier. Mommy? Lily asked, walking over to her. Is that man really my daddy? Rachel sank to her knees and pulled her daughter into her arms. Yes, sweetheart. He is. Does he love me? Rachel blinked away tears. I don't know yet, but I think he wants to. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she whispered, He looked scared. Rachel smiled sadly. He was scared. Sometimes grown-ups get scared too. Meanwhile, back in his office, Damien sat at his desk, staring at the unopened second letter. The weight of the decision before him was unbearable. His father had left him a poisoned legacy, money and power on one hand, love and truth on the other. He hated how even in death the old man could twist a knife in his heart. He finally opened the envelope. You'll be angry, Damien, I expect that. But one day you'll thank me. You'll understand that protecting your name, your future, your empire was the only thing that mattered. That girl, that child, they would have been your weakness. Now you have a chance to make the right decision. Take the gift I've left you, or walk away. But know this, one path leads to legacy, the other to ruin. Damien threw the letter across the room. He rose, pacing. His eyes burned with emotion. What kind of man was he becoming? Could he walk away from the empire he built, one that his father had shaped with iron hands, for the sake of a child he'd only just met? And what about Rachel? He remembered her laugh, the way she used to tuck notes into his locker, the way she looked at him that day in the lobby, equal parts defiance and sorrow. He sat down again, buried his face in his hands, and let the silence fill the room. Then he reached for his phone. He didn't know what he would say. He just knew he had to see her again. Rachel was in the kitchen washing dishes when her phone buzzed on the counter. She hesitated before drying her hands and picking it up. The name flashing on the screen made her heart skip. Damien. For a second, she considered letting it ring. Then, with a shaky breath, she answered, Hello? His voice came low and rough. Can we talk? She closed her eyes. Damien, I don't want to fight. I'm not calling to fight. I'm calling to understand. She leaned against the counter. You read the second letter. I did, he said, and for a few minutes I thought about it. Thought about the empire, the conditions. But I'm not that man. I'm not him. Rachel stayed quiet. I don't know how to do this, he continued. I don't know how to be a father, but I know I want to try. If you'll let me." Her eyes stung. She hadn't expected that. Not so soon. Not with the weight of his father's words hanging over them. "She's been asking about you all evening," she said softly. "She keeps drawing pictures of a man in a suit holding her hand." There was a pause. Then he said, "I want to see her, both of you." Rachel's voice caught. "Okay. Tomorrow? I'll pick you up at 10. They hung up without another word, both hearts thudding with anticipation. The next morning, Damien stood outside Rachel's building in his sleek black car, nervous for the first time in years. He checked his appearance in the mirror, then shook his head. What did it matter how he looked? What mattered was her, the child who had walked into his life and changed everything with a bear. When they came out, Lily was holding Rachel's hand and wearing a dress with yellow sunflowers. She beamed when she saw him. "Hi, Daddy," she called. His breath caught. The word hit harder than any boardroom battle. He smiled, slowly, nervously. "Hey, Lily." Rachel opened the car door and helped Lily climb in. They drove in silence for a bit, the hum of the city filtering in. "Where are we going?" Rachel asked. "There's a park I used to go to as a kid. It's quiet. I thought, maybe we could start there." At the park, they walked slowly beneath the tall trees. Damien watched Lily skip ahead, pointing at squirrels and chasing butterflies. Rachel watched him watching her. "She really is yours," she said gently. He nodded. "I see it more every second." They sat on a bench. Lily ran ahead to the swings. "She doesn't know the world we come from," Rachel said. "She doesn't know about wealth, legacy, betrayal. She's just Lily." "I want to keep it that way," Damien said, "at least for a while." Rachel turned to him, surprised. He met her eyes. "I want her to have what I didn't." They sat there, the sounds of children and laughter around them. And for the first time in years, Damien felt something like peace. But it wouldn't last. Not for long. The peace shattered later that evening, just as Rachel was settling Lily into bed. Her phone rang again, but this time it wasn't Damien. It was an unknown number. She almost let it go to voicemail, but something told her to answer. "Hello?" A male voice responded, cold and familiar. "Rachel, it's Victor Lane." She froze. Victor had been her father's lawyer years ago. More importantly, he had been one of Damien's father's closest associates, the man who delivered the bribe all those years ago. The man who warned her never to return. "What do you want?" she whispered, instinctively moving to another room so Lily wouldn't hear. "I heard you've reappeared, with a child bearing the Sterling bloodline." Rachel's stomach turned. "That's none of your business." He chuckled darkly. "Oh, but it is. You see, your reappearance complicates certain trusts, certain inheritances, and I represent several parties who stand to lose significantly if your daughter is recognized." Her fingers clenched around the phone. "Are you threatening me?" "No," he said calmly. "I'm giving you an option. Take this check, walk away again, or face a legal battle that will leave you penniless and your daughter dragged through the headlines." Rachel's voice hardened. "You think I'm scared of you? I already lost everything once. I won't do it again." Victor sighed. "Such a shame. We could have handled this quietly. Now it's going to get messy." He hung up. Rachel stood in her dark hallway, shaking. She knew Victor, knew what he was capable of. This wasn't just a bluff. This was war. Meanwhile, Damien sat alone in his penthouse, poring over old photographs. He had spent the last few hours digging through boxes stored deep in his closets, memories he hadn't touched in decades. He found one of his mother holding him, a faded photo of a boy with a bear tucked under his arm. He hadn't thought about her in years. She had vanished without a trace. His father had insisted she'd run off, unable to handle the pressure of the Sterling name. But now, Damien wondered, what if it had been more than that? What if the same man who had driven Rachel away had done something worse to his mother? The idea chilled him. Then his phone buzzed. It was Rachel. She was calling back. He answered quickly. "Is everything okay?" "No," she said, her voice trembling. "We have a problem. Victor Lane contacted me. He knows about Lily. He's trying to buy me off." Damien's blood turned to ice. "He what?" "He threatened to take us to court. He wants to keep her out of the Sterling legacy." Damien stood, fury building. "Let him try. I'm not my father, and he's about to find that out." Rachel's voice cracked. "I don't want Lily hurt." "She won't be," he promised. "Not on my watch." But deep down he knew this wasn't just about legacy anymore. It was about uncovering everything his father had buried. The next morning, Damien arrived at Rachel's apartment early. She opened the door, still in her robe, eyes red from a sleepless night. Lily was in the living room, coloring quietly, the bear beside her. "I didn't know who else to call," Rachel said softly. "You did the right thing," Damien replied. "I'm not letting them scare you." He stepped inside, glancing around the modest apartment. It wasn't what he was used to, no steel, no marble, but it felt warmer than any place he'd lived in years. "I called my legal team," he continued. "They're already pulling everything they can on Victor Lane. We'll bury him in paperwork before he even gets to file a motion." Rachel looked unconvinced. "You don't understand. These people, they don't fight fair. They don't care about the truth." "I do," Damien said firmly, "and I have the resources to make sure it wins." She studied him, as if searching for cracks in his conviction. "Why are you doing this?" He hesitated. "Because I lost you once." "I won't lose her too." That silenced her. In the background, Lily ran over with a drawing. "Look, Mommy, it's all of us. Me, you, and Daddy." Damien crouched beside her, taking the picture. It was crude, 3 stick figures holding hands, but it hit him harder than any annual report ever had. He smiled. "It's perfect." They spent the day together, the first real day that felt like something new, something possible. They went to the aquarium, where Lily pressed her face against the glass to watch jellyfish swirl. They had lunch at a quiet cafe where Damien tried, unsuccessfully, to teach Lily how to fold a napkin into a swan. Rachel laughed for the first time in days, but the peace didn't last. That evening, as they returned to the apartment, a black car was parked across the street. Rachel froze. "It's him," she whispered. "Victor." Damien's expression darkened. "Stay here." He walked across the street, his every step deliberate. Victor Lane stood by the car, leaning casually, a smug smile on his face. "I expected a call," Victor said, "not a confrontation." "You threatened the mother of my child," Damien said coldly. "That's not something I let slide." Victor shrugged. "I offered her a solution. The smart kind. You think this ends with bedtime stories and park visits? The board already has questions. They'll eat you alive if they find out you've been hiding a child from a former employee." "You forget who runs the board now," Damien said. "And if you ever contact Rachel or Lily again, I'll make sure you're the one buried, professionally and legally." Victor smiled wider. "I wonder, do you really want to dig into your father's secrets? Because if you do, you might not like what you find." Damien stepped closer. "I'm counting on it." Victor leaned in, voice low. "Then let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes." Damien returned to the apartment, heart pounding. Rachel was at the window, holding Lily close. "What did he say?" she asked. "He's hiding something," Damien replied. "Something about my father." And suddenly, it wasn't just about protecting Lily. It was about finally uncovering the truth that had haunted him his whole life. That night, long after Lily had fallen asleep, Damien and Rachel sat on the couch in the dim light of the living room. The air between them was heavy, pulsing with unspoken truths. Outside, the city moved on as if nothing had changed, but in this apartment, everything had shifted. Damien leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "He said something strange, that I wouldn't like what I found if I kept digging into my father's past." Rachel crossed her arms, curling slightly inward. "Your father always had secrets. Even when I was a teenager, I knew he was capable of things most people couldn't imagine." Damien looked over at her. "Like what?" She hesitated. "I never told you this, but the night I found out I was pregnant, I went to your house. I wanted to tell you, but your father answered the door. He said you weren't there. He looked at me like I was nothing. And then he told me that if I ever showed my face again, he'd ruin me. My family. Everyone I loved. Damien swallowed hard. He didn't even tell me you came. Rachel nodded. He lied to both of us. And I believed him. I was scared. Damien stood, pacing. What if it wasn't just you? What if the same thing happened with my mother? Rachel blinked. You think he pushed her away too? I don't know, but I have to find out. There was a silence between them. Then Rachel said quietly, what if the truth is worse than you think? Then I deal with it, Damien said. I'm done living under his shadow. He moved to the window, looking out at the skyline, his reflection faint in the glass. I'm going to hire a private investigator, someone who can get past the layers my father built. I want every document, every sealed record, every lie exposed. Rachel rose, walking up behind him. Damien, this could destroy everything he left behind. He turned to face her. Then let it burn. For the first time in years, she saw not the CEO, not the man forged by legacy and power, but the boy she once loved, standing there with fire in his eyes. Suddenly, a knock rattled the door. Rachel froze. Damien instinctively stepped in front of her. He opened it slowly. It wasn't Victor, it was a woman, older, frail, her eyes sunken but piercing with familiarity. Damien, she said, her voice trembling. His mouth parted in disbelief. Mom? The woman stood there, gripping the doorframe like she might fall. I didn't know where else to go, she whispered. Rachel stepped forward, stunned. Your mother? But I thought... Damien's face had gone completely pale. So did I. And everything he thought he knew shattered in an instant. For a moment, no one moved. The hallway felt frozen in time, the air thick with disbelief. Damien stared at the woman before him, his mother, the ghost from his childhood, the woman he'd mourned silently for decades. Her hair, once rich and auburn, was now streaked with grey, her features lined by time and hardship. But her eyes, those were unmistakable. The same eyes that used to watch over him as he slept, the same eyes that had disappeared one terrible night without a trace. Is it really you? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, her chin trembling. It's me, Damien. Rachel stepped back, instinctively pulling Lily behind her. The child peeked out, sensing the tension, but too young to understand the magnitude of the moment. Damien opened the door wider. Come in. His mother stepped inside, her movements careful, as if she didn't quite believe she was welcome yet. She took in the apartment with a curious glance, but her eyes kept returning to Damien, her son, the boy she left behind. Where have you been? He asked, his voice cracking. She sat slowly on the edge of the couch. Hiding. From me. From him, she said bitterly. Your father. Rachel exchanged a glance with Damien. The patterns were repeating themselves in terrifying symmetry. He said you left, Damien continued, that you couldn't handle the pressure, that you ran. A bitter smile tugged at her lips. Of course he did. That's what he wanted you to believe. Damien's hands curled into fists. Then what happened? Why did you leave me? Her eyes filled with tears. Because I was going to testify against him. He blinked, stunned. Testify? She nodded. I found out things, Damien. Illegal things, tax fraud, offshore accounts, money laundering. I told him I was going to the authorities. He told me if I did, he'd make sure I disappeared, and then he followed through. Rachel covered her mouth. He tried to have you killed. No, Damien's mother said. Worse. He discredited me, paid off doctors to declare me unstable, had me committed to a private psychiatric facility under a false name. I spent 12 years locked away, treated like a lunatic. Damien staggered back. Why didn't you call me? Right. They drugged me, Damien. I didn't even know what year it was half the time, And when I finally got out, I had nothing, no ID, no access to anything. It took me years just to find someone who believed me. Damien's head was spinning. Everything was unraveling. His father hadn't just driven people away, he had destroyed them. And now his mother was back, carrying decades of pain in her frail hands. She reached for him gently. "I never stopped loving you. Not for a second." His voice cracked. "I needed you." Tears slid down her cheeks. "I know, and I'm so sorry." Behind them, Lily watched quietly, the toy bear resting in her lap. Another generation caught in the wake of secrets, and this time, someone had to make it right. The hours that followed were heavy with confession. Damien sat beside his mother, his mind reeling as she recounted the nightmare she had endured. Rachel moved quietly through the apartment, preparing tea, keeping Lily occupied, but her ears remained tuned to every word. "They told me I was bipolar," his mother said, staring at her hands, "that I was dangerous, that I hallucinated. But the truth was, I wasn't sick, I was a threat." Damien's voice was hollow. "He paid doctors, didn't he?" She nodded. "And judges, and orderlies. I tried to escape twice. Both times they dragged me back. It wasn't until a new administrator came in that someone finally listened." Rachel brought the tea to the table, placing it gently between them. "And after that? I was released, but I had no money, no way to contact anyone. Everything I had was gone, even my name. I went to shelters, took jobs under aliases. I spent years just surviving." She looked at Damien. "But I never stopped looking for you." Damien's throat tightened. "I needed a mother, and all I had was him." "I know." Her voice broke. "And that's what hurts the most." He rubbed his hands over his face, then stood and began pacing. "All my life, I modeled myself after him. Built my company with his rules. I thought he was strong, unbreakable." Rachel spoke softly from across the room. "He was never strong, Damien. He was afraid. Afraid of losing control. Of letting anyone in." Damien stopped by the window, staring out at the night sky. "He made me believe love was weakness, that emotion was a liability." "Then prove him wrong," Rachel said. "You already are." He turned to face her, eyes dark. "There's more. Rachel and I, our daughter, she's in danger because of what he built. His associates are trying to push them out of my life, threatening lawsuits, trying to erase them from the legacy." His mother's eyes flashed. "Then take it all away from them. Shine a light on everything. Destroy what he tried to protect." Rachel stepped closer, hesitant. "Are you sure? That legacy is your empire." Damien looked between them. His mother, back from the dead, and the woman he'd loved, the mother of his child. Then to Lily, asleep on the couch now, the bear cradled in her arms. "I'm not my father," he said, "and I don't want to be the man he trained me to become. I want to be something else." His mother rose slowly. "Then we do this together. We expose him, his crimes, his lies." Rachel took a breath. "That means press, lawsuits, a media circus, Lily's face in the news." Damien shook his head. "No, I'll take the hit. I'll be the one in front. You and Lily stay protected." He walked to the table, pulled out his phone and began typing. Rachel asked, "What are you doing?" "Calling a press conference," he said. "Tomorrow morning." Rachel's eyes widened. "You're going public?" Damien looked up. "The world's about to find out who I really am, and who my father really was." The next morning dawned grey and tense. Damien stood in front of the mirror in his penthouse, tying his tie with trembling fingers. He wasn't used to this kind of vulnerability. Press conferences were usually about mergers, acquisitions, quarterly profits, not family secrets and decades of buried crimes. His reflection stared back at him, unreadable. He looked like the CEO, the powerful man at the top of a tower. But inside, he felt like the boy clutching a bear, waiting for answers that never came. His phone buzzed. "Rachel, we're watching from home. We believe in you." He exhaled, sliding the phone into his pocket. Those words meant more than he could admit. Downstairs, the Sterling Enterprises lobby was packed. Reporters filled the room, microphones ready, eyes sharp. Camera crews lined the back wall. The company had only released a vague statement. The CEO has an important personal announcement regarding the Sterling legacy. Damien stepped onto the platform, flashbulbs immediately lighting up. He adjusted the microphone, waited for silence. "Thank you for coming," he began. "What I'm about to share with you today is not easy. But it is necessary." The crowd shifted, sensing something big. For years, the name Sterling has stood for power, success, control. But that image came at a cost paid in silence, in lies, in the destruction of lives. He paused, scanning the sea of faces. "My father, Jonathan Sterling, built this empire on ruthless ambition. But behind closed doors, he also orchestrated fraud, manipulation, and violence against those who threatened his control, including members of his own family." Gasps rippled through the room. Damien continued, his voice steady. "He institutionalized my mother under false pretenses to silence her. He drove away the woman I loved. He separated me from my daughter. And he did it all under the guise of legacy." He reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. "These are documents proving tax fraud, falsified medical records, offshore accounts, all of which I will be turning over to federal investigators." Reporters erupted with questions, flashes going wild. "I am stepping down as CEO of Sterling Enterprises," Damien added, "effective immediately. I will be founding a new organization dedicated to protecting whistleblowers and exposing corporate abuse. The Sterling name will no longer stand for power without accountability." One reporter shouted, "What about your daughter? Is this about her?" Damien met the camera head on. "Yes, her name is Lily. She's 6 years old. And she reminded me of the man I wanted to be before I forgot." Another voice called out, "And Rachel Ellis? The woman who once worked here?" He smiled faintly. "She was never just an employee. She was my family, and she still is." The press clamored, but Damien stepped back, leaving the microphone behind as security ushered him out. Outside, he breathed in the cool air. The weight on his shoulders hadn't disappeared, but something else had taken its place. Clarity. He had just torn down the empire his father built. Now it was time to build something new. Back at Rachel's apartment, the living room was bathed in the soft blue glow of the television. Rachel sat on the edge of the couch, clutching the remote with white knuckles. Lily leaned against her side, eyes wide as she watched her father on screen. Damien's words echoed through the speakers, raw and unwavering, as he dismantled the myth of Jonathan Sterling in front of the world. Rachel couldn't breathe for a moment. She had known he was serious, but not this serious. He hadn't just taken a stand, he'd set fire to everything he once held sacred. She turned to her mother-in-law, now sitting quietly by the window. The older woman had tears in her eyes. "He did it," she whispered. "He finally broke the chain." Rachel nodded, voice thick. "He didn't just speak for himself. He spoke for all of us." Lily looked up, tugging at Rachel's sleeve. "Is Daddy coming home now?" Rachel smiled and kissed her daughter's forehead. "I think so, sweetheart. I think he's coming home for good." Meanwhile, Damien sat alone in his car, parked near the river where his father used to take him when he was a boy. He remembered those outings, always silent, always cold. His father never told stories, never laughed, just stared at the water, telling Damien to watch and learn. "Stillness is strength," the old man used to say. But Damien didn't believe that anymore. Strength wasn't stillness, it was action. It was vulnerability. It was standing up, even if your voice shook. His phone buzzed. "Rachel, we're proud of you. Come home." He stared at the message for a long moment. Then he drove. When he arrived at Rachel's door, he hesitated only for a second before knocking. She opened it instantly, as if she'd been waiting by the door the whole time. They looked at each other, saying nothing. Then Rachel stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. "I didn't think you'd actually do it," she whispered. "I couldn't not do it," he replied, burying his face in her shoulder. Behind them, Lily appeared, holding the bear. "Daddy!" she cried, running toward him. Damien knelt and scooped her into his arms. She giggled and squeezed his neck. "I saw you on TV," she said proudly. He smiled. You did. You were loud, she whispered, and brave. Rachel crouched beside them, her eyes misty. So what now? Damien looked at them both. Now? We live. They spent the evening curled on the couch, eating takeout and laughing through exhausted tears. Damien told stories from his childhood. Rachel showed Lily old photo albums. The apartment, once quiet with fear, was filled with warmth and new beginnings. But just before midnight, as Damien stepped out to take a call, his phone rang again, this time from a blocked number. He hesitated, then answered. A gravelly voice came through. "How you thought your father was the only one with secrets?" The line went dead, and the shadows of the past stirred once more. Damien stood frozen on the balcony, the city sprawling beneath him like a glowing maze. The anonymous voice echoed in his ear, chilling and unfamiliar. It hadn't been Victor Lane. It wasn't anyone from his father's known circle. No, this voice carried a different weight, a new threat, or perhaps an older one, long hidden. He re-entered the apartment slowly, masking his tension. Rachel looked up from the couch where she lay with Lily tucked to sleep at her side. "Everything okay?" she asked softly. Damien forced a nod. "Just a call from an old contact. I'll handle it." She studied him. "Is this about what you said today?" "It might be," he said, avoiding the full truth for now. "But I'm not backing down." Rachel didn't push. Not tonight. She simply stood, walked over, and rested her head against his chest. "We're with you." He kissed her forehead. "I know." Later, after Lily had been carried to bed and Rachel drifted off, Damien returned to his study. He poured himself a glass of scotch, staring at the wall of old files he'd recovered from his father's private archives. Since exposing the first wave of sterling corruption, more had surfaced. Shell companies, suspicious deaths, even ties to foreign accounts that couldn't be traced. But it was the call that disturbed him the most. "You thought your father was the only one with secrets." That voice, it wasn't just a threat, it was a warning, a promise that more was coming. He opened a locked drawer and pulled out a box marked with his father's initials. Inside were documents wrapped in cloth, yellowed with age. One of them bore a seal he didn't recognize, a crest not belonging to the sterling name. He unfolded it, and his eyes scanned quickly. Then they stopped. One name stood out, handwritten in the corner of the page. Elena Moore. Damien blinked. That name meant nothing to him, until he remembered the psychiatric facility his mother had mentioned. She had said a woman helped her escape. A nurse. A stranger who took a risk. Could this be her? He pulled out his laptop and began searching. 30 minutes later, he found it. A small obituary, dated just 3 months ago. Elena Moore, former nurse. Survived by one son. And beneath it, a name that made his blood run cold. Victor Lane Jr. His fingers hovered above the keyboard. It wasn't over. Not even close. Victor Lane hadn't just been trying to erase the past. He was protecting something. Or someone. Damien closed the laptop slowly. He looked toward the bedroom door where Rachel and Lily slept peacefully, unaware of the storm still brewing. He thought he had brought the truth into the light. But now he realized he'd only scratched the surface. Damien didn't sleep that night. His mind was a tangle of names, timelines, and the chilling realization that Victor Lane Jr., the son of the very man who once tried to bury the truth, was closer to this than anyone realized. The nurse who helped his mother escape hadn't just risked her job, she had paid with her life, and her son was now entangled in the web Damien was just beginning to untangle. By sunrise, he was dressed and downstairs in his car, driving through the early morning fog toward an address he'd pulled from a digital trail linked to Victor Jr.'s consulting firm. Rachel had stirred when he left, but he only kissed her forehead and whispered that he needed to tie up loose ends. He didn't want to drag her or Lily into another confrontation, at least not yet. The building he arrived at wasn't flashy like the Sterling Tower. It was tucked in a quiet neighborhood, more like a lawyer's den than a corporate front. Damien entered, noting the old receptionist who barely glanced up before pointing to a set of stairs. Second floor, end of the hall. He didn't need to ask how she knew. When he reached the office, the door was already open. Inside, Victor Lane Jr. sat behind a mahogany desk, the same smirk playing on his lips that his father had worn decades ago. "Mr. Sterling," he said smoothly, rising. "I was wondering when you'd come." Damien closed the door behind him. "Cut the theatrics. Why did you call me?" Victor gestured for him to sit. "Because we're not so different, you and I. We both inherited legacies we didn't ask for." "I didn't inherit anything. I burned it down." Victor's smile widened. "Did you?" He slid a folder across the table. Damien didn't touch it. "What is that?" "Proof," Victor said, "of something your father never wanted you to know. Something even your mother might not remember." Damien's jaw tensed. "What are you talking about?" Victor leaned in. "Elena Moore, my mother, was more than just a nurse. She worked for your father before she ever set foot in that hospital. She was a fixer, a cleaner. She handled problems, until your mother became one of them." Damien stiffened. "But she broke protocol," Victor continued. "She helped your mother escape, and when my father found out, he made her disappear. That's when I started digging, and guess what I found?" Damien finally opened the folder. Inside were photos, grainy black and white, of his father with several high-profile men, politicians, judges, and one in particular, a man Damien recognized from recent news, a senator embroiled in a major corruption scandal. "What is this?" "A network," Victor said. "The real legacy your father left behind. Sterling Enterprises was just the public face. The rest was hidden in offshore deals, human leverage, and controlled collapses. Your family wasn't just powerful, they were dangerous." Damien stared at the photos, his blood turning cold. Victor sat back. "So now the question is, what do you plan to do with all this?" And Damien knew. He was standing at the edge of a fire much bigger than he'd ever imagined. Damien closed the folder slowly, his fingertips numb. The images burned into his memory, a web of powerful men, handshakes exchanged in shadows, smiles masking corruption. The implications were staggering. His father hadn't just silenced people to protect his own empire. He'd been part of something deeper, something far-reaching. A machine that consumed anyone who dared defy it. "This is real?" Damien asked, his voice low. Victor nodded. "I've spent the last 10 years collecting it. At first, it was revenge. But eventually I realized something else. Your father wasn't the only monster. He was part of a dynasty of monsters." Damien stood, the folder still in his hand. "Why give this to me?" "Because you already lit the match," Victor said. "I figured you'd want to watch the fire spread." Damien stared at him, jaw tight. "You don't care about justice. You care about chaos." Victor smirked. "And you care about image. That's the difference. You want to do the right thing and stay clean. But let me ask you, Damien, what happens when you realize you can't have both?" Damien turned and walked out without answering. The city outside felt different as he drove home, sharper, more fragile, like something about to crack. He clutched the folder tighter, as though it might dissolve if he let go. By the time he reached the apartment, Rachel was pacing. "Where were you?" she asked the moment he stepped inside. Damien handed her the folder. "This is what we're up against." She opened it slowly. Her breath caught as she flipped through the photos. "Oh my God!" "It wasn't just my father," he said. "There's a whole structure behind him. Judges, politicians, corporations. They've been working together for decades, covering each other's tracks." Rachel sat down hard. "And now they know we know." "I think so," Damien said. "Victor gave me this, but not out of kindness. He wants to destroy what's left of the name Sterling, tear down every pillar. And he knows I'm the only one who can do it from the inside." Rachel looked at him, eyes wide. "So what do we do?" Damien's voice was firm. "We go public. Again. But not just with words. With evidence. Real evidence." She shook her head. "They'll come after you." "I'm not worried about me," he said. "I'm worried about you and Lily." Rachel's eyes softened, but there was fear behind them. Then send us away. No, Damien said. No more running. We stay. We protect each other. That night, they began digitizing the documents. Rachel worked beside him, scanning files, organizing names, cross-referencing dates. It felt like peeling back layers of rot from a decaying structure. The deeper they dug, the worse it got. And somewhere, deep in the files, Rachel found something else. Damien, she said, holding up a page. He took it and froze. It was a record of payments, regular deposits made to an account under a different name. But the birth date matched Lily's. And the name, Rachel Ellis. He looked at her, stunned. He knew, my father, Chow, he knew you had the baby. He's been paying someone to watch you. Rachel's face turned pale. All these years, we thought we were free. But they had never been free, not for a second. Damien's mind raced as he stared at the payment records. The cold precision of it all, the account names, the disguised transactions, the monthly consistency, screamed of his father's calculated cruelty. There was no doubt now. Jonathan Sterling had been watching Rachel and Lily from the beginning. Even in death, he had planned every move. Rachel sank onto the couch, gripping the edge of the cushion. I thought we were safe, that I'd escaped. Damien sat beside her. He wanted control, always, even from the grave. She looked at him, her eyes filling. Do you think he planned to take her? Damien didn't answer right away. But deep down, he knew the truth. If he hadn't died when he did, I think he would have tried. That's why he wrote that second letter, his last grasp to manipulate me into choosing his legacy over you. Rachel's hands trembled in her lap. So, what do we do now? Damien stood, a new resolve building. We finish this. He reached for his phone and dialed. Owen, it's me. I need a secure channel set up for a data release, not just to the press, government agencies, watchdog groups, international outlets. We're taking the whole network down. His head of cybersecurity on the other end barely responded. Just a quick, understood. Rachel whispered, This will change everything. That's the point, he replied. They worked through the night. Damien coordinated with a small trusted team. The documents were encrypted, watermarked, and scheduled for simultaneous release across dozens of platforms. Rachel made sure each piece was organized, labeled, and irrefutable. The operation felt more like a military mission than a press effort, but as dawn crept in through the windows, something felt off. Rachel walked to the front door to check the lock and froze. There was an envelope on the floor. No knock, no sound, just there. She picked it up slowly. There was no name, no return address. Damien joined her and took it carefully from her hands. Inside was a single piece of paper, typed, neat, precise. If you go through with this, the child pays the price. Some legacies die quietly, others don't, Rachel gasped. They know. Damien, they know we're about to release it. Damien read the note again, his hand tightening around the edge. They're bluffing. What if they're not? She whispered. He looked at her, at the fear in her eyes, and then toward the hallway where Lily still slept peacefully. They won't touch her, he said through clenched teeth. Not while I'm breathing. Rachel's voice cracked. We should go to the police. We will. But not until this gets out. Not until everyone sees what they've done. He held up the letter. They want to scare us into silence, he said. But they don't realize who they're dealing with. Rachel met his gaze, and for the first time in years, she saw not just the man she once loved, but a father ready to fight for more than just truth. He was ready to fight for family. By mid-morning, the secure upload was in motion. Damien sat in front of 3 screens, watching encrypted packets of data flood cloud servers scattered across the globe. He had triple-backed everything, fireproof drives hidden off-site, a kill switch on his own laptop to prevent interception, and one trusted journalist already preparing the first exclusive. But the threat in the anonymous note lingered in the back of his mind like poison. Rachel stood at the window, arms crossed, eyes on the street. Every passing car made her flinch. What if they're watching us right now? They are, Damien said flatly. But that's what they don't understand. I want them to know I'm not afraid. She turned to him. You think they'll actually come for Lily? Damien didn't answer right away. He pushed back from the desk and crossed the room to her. They've already tried everything else, threats, blackmail, silence. If they go after her, it's their last move. Then we're out of time. He nodded. Which means we move first. Just then, the apartment lights flickered. Rachel's breath caught. What was that? Damien reached for his phone. It had gone black. All three computer monitors blinked, then shut down in perfect sync. He grabbed a backup drive, yanking it from its port, and turned to Rachel. We're not safe here. Go get Lily. Rachel rushed down the hallway as Damien opened a drawer under his desk, retrieving a hidden phone. Satellite-linked and untouchable by local interference. He dialed a secure number. Owen, power's out. System's dead. We've been breached. Understood, came the voice on the other end. Do you have the drives? Got one. Sending you coordinates. We're moving now. Rachel reappeared, Lily in her arms, half asleep and confused. What's happening? Lily asked. We're going on a little trip, Rachel said, trying to sound calm. It's okay, baby. Damien led them to the elevator, but it was dead. We'll take the stairs. They descended 12 flights in silence, Damien moving with his body, shielding them both. Outside, the street was too quiet. No honking, no traffic, too clean. He flagged a nondescript black SUV waiting at the curb. The driver nodded at him. A former security chief Damien had pulled out of retirement just for this moment. They climbed in. Where to, sir? Safe house, Protocol 4. Rachel clutched Lily tightly. How long have you had a Protocol 4? Damien gave a tight smile. Since I was 16. They drove through back routes and service tunnels beneath the city, eventually pulling into a concealed underground garage. A steel-reinforced door slid shut behind them with a hiss. Inside, the safe house was small, but fully equipped. Concrete walls, emergency supplies, tech consoles powered by independent generators. Rachel looked around in awe. You really planned for everything. I had to, he said. He placed the backup drive on a secured console and powered up a hidden terminal. We send it from here, he said. Rachel watched him, her expression a mix of pride and fear. Lily sat on a small cot nearby, hugging the bear again. Then Damien spoke, softly but firmly. We're not hiding anymore. We're finishing this. But even as the screen lit up with final upload confirmations, none of them noticed the blinking red light embedded in the SUV they had arrived in. They weren't as hidden as they thought. The safe house hummed with quiet tension. The upload bar crept toward completion, 82%, then 89%, then 93%. Damien kept his eyes fixed on the screen, fingers tapping rhythmically against the desk. Rachel stood nearby, pacing in a tight circle, glancing anxiously at the door. Lily had finally dozed off on the cot, the bear wrapped tightly in her arms. Rachel spoke first, her voice hushed. Once it goes live, we can't take it back. I don't want to, Damien replied. They've controlled the narrative long enough. She stepped beside him, watching the screen. What if we're wrong? What if this brings more danger? Damien looked up at her, eyes steady. Then we face it together. The upload hit 100%. A soft chime confirmed the files had been sent to every outlet on Damien's list: media, justice departments, activist groups, even international agencies. Within moments, the entire digital infrastructure of his father's hidden empire would be exposed. A pop-up appeared. Successful distribution to 47 targets. Backups deployed. Rachel exhaled. It's done. Damien leaned back, his hands falling into his lap. For a moment, silence wrapped around them like a fragile thread of peace. Then a knock sounded at the steel door. They both froze. Damien stood slowly, signaling Rachel to stay back. He moved to the small monitor showing the outside hallway. A single figure stood just outside the threshold, face obscured by a hood. The intercom crackled to life. I'm not here to hurt you, the voice said. "I'm here because you just made a very powerful enemy." Rachel's breath hitched. "Who is that?" Damien stared at the monitor. "He's not from Victor's camp, he's something else." The man on the screen pulled back his hood. Rachel gasped. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone from her past, someone she hadn't seen since she was 16. "Logan," she whispered. Damien turned to her sharply. "You know him? He was my stepbrother, before everything went wrong. Before your father paid my mother off and we left town. I haven't heard from him in 20 years. The intercom buzzed again. "I know what you're up against," Logan said, "and I know the names you haven't uncovered yet. Let me in, or you won't survive the week." Damien looked at Rachel. She was pale, lips parted, visibly shaken. "Can we trust him?" he asked. "I don't know," she whispered, "but if he's here, then this goes deeper than even you thought." The tension hung heavy. Damien stepped to the door and paused with his hand on the lock, because sometimes the most dangerous secrets weren't buried by enemies, they were hidden by family. Damien stared at the reinforced steel door, his hand hovering just inches from the keypad. The air in the safe house had gone still, thick with dread. On the screen, Logan stood motionless in the hallway, hood down, eyes sharp with the weight of a history neither he nor Rachel had fully spoken of yet. "Tell me what I need to know," Damien said without turning. "Now." Rachel's voice trembled. "Logan was my stepbrother. We weren't close. My mom married his dad when I was 10. We moved in with them for a few years, and then everything fell apart." "What happened?" Damien asked. Rachel wrapped her arms around herself. "His father was abusive, controlling. He scared me, he scared Logan too, but one day Logan just vanished. My mom said he ran away. We moved out shortly after." Damien studied her. "Do you believe that now?" She shook her head slowly. "No, not anymore." He pressed the intercom button. "If you want in, talk." Logan's voice came through clearly. "Your father knew mine. They were connected through something bigger. Investments, exchanges, blackmail. My father wasn't just violent, Damien. He was one of Jonathan Sterling's enforcers. He handled things when legal pressure wasn't enough." Rachel's knees buckled slightly. Damien caught her arm. "I was going to go to the police," Logan continued, "but someone stopped me, paid my father to make me disappear. When I came back years later, he was dead, and I started digging." Damien's jaw tightened. "Why now?" "Because you just triggered the final fail-safe. You exposed them, and now they're coming for you. All of you." "But there's more, Damien. There are people still inside your company, plants, left behind years ago, waiting for this day." Rachel turned to Damien, her voice low. "You have to let him in." Damien hesitated a beat longer, then entered the code. The steel door clicked open with a mechanical hiss. Logan stepped in slowly, hands raised to show he carried nothing. His eyes met Rachel's first, an awkward mix of guilt, pain, and recognition. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She nodded, blinking back tears. "Me too." Damien motioned to the table. "Talk." Logan dropped a flash drive on the surface. "There's one more layer to this conspiracy. Your father's network didn't just reach into politics and finance, it reached into bloodlines. He made pacts with other dynasties, arranged marriages, staged betrayals, all to build power structures through children he could control." Damien frowned. "What are you saying?" Logan met his eyes. "That you weren't his only heir." Rachel gasped. Damien stepped back. Logan nodded. "There's another, a half-brother, raised in secret, groomed since birth to take over everything." Rachel's voice shook. "Where is he?" Logan looked down grimly. "Coming for you." And the final storm had just begun. The room fell into a stunned silence. Rachel clutched the edge of the table, her eyes darting between Damien and Logan. Damien stood motionless, processing the revelation. Another heir, a half-brother raised in secret. The very idea twisted something deep in his chest, a legacy tainted not just by lies but by design. Damien's voice was low, steady. What's his name? Logan exhaled. Julian Vance. His mother was a political strategist from Europe. Brilliant, ruthless. Your father met her during one of his international expansions. She was meant to be an asset. Instead, she gave him a second son. Rachel shook her head. Why keep that hidden? Why go through all the trouble? Because Julian was born with one purpose, Logan replied. To succeed where Damien might fail. He was raised outside the public eye, trained in finance, law, military strategy. He's everything your father wanted. Obedient, ruthless, controlled. And now that you've burned the Empire to the ground, he's coming to rebuild it. His way. Damien sat slowly, eyes on the flash drive. You said he's coming for me. He's already moved into position, Logan said. He was behind the anonymous threat, behind the surveillance on Rachel and Lily, and he's not alone. He has allies, men who used to answer to your father, now loyal to him. Rachel reached instinctively for Lily, still asleep on the cot. So what do we do? Damien stood again, taller, sharper now. We draw him out. We don't hide anymore. Logan looked uncertain. That's risky. So is letting him keep control, Damien snapped. I won't let another Sterling rise from the shadows to twist everything further. If he wants a legacy war, he picked the wrong opponent. Rachel moved beside him, her hand on his arm. We're with you, but we need to be smart. Logan nodded. I have contacts. People who left the network quietly. If we move fast, we can intercept Julian before he fully steps into the light. Damien grabbed the flash drive, plugged it into the terminal. Files opened, photos, names, addresses. One in particular stood out, a chateau in France, a private estate. Surveillance photos showed a man who looked strikingly familiar. Dark hair, sharp features, the same eyes Damien saw in the mirror. It was him, Julian, and he looked ready. Damien pointed to the screen. We go there, we find him. We end this. Rachel's voice cracked. And if he fights back? Damien turned to her. Then we fight harder. Just then, the console beeped. A live message flashed across the screen, pinging from an untraceable source. To Damien Sterling, I warned you, now I'll show you what legacy really means. Below the message was a live feed. Lily, asleep, in her cot, inside the safe house. Rachel screamed. Damien lunged for the security feed. The camera angle wasn't from their system. It was someone else's, inside the walls. Panic surged through Damien's chest like fire. He ripped the keyboard closer, pulling up every internal surveillance node, command override, firewall. They were all intact. Their system hadn't been breached from the outside. It had been installed with a breach already inside. Rachel rushed to Lily's side, scooping her daughter into her arms, now fully awake and blinking in confusion. What's happening? Lily asked sleepily. Rachel tried to keep her voice calm. Just stay with me, sweetheart. We're okay. Logan stood beside Damien, watching as the feed stayed frozen on that chilling image. An unseen camera, somewhere inside their concrete sanctuary, watching the most vulnerable piece of their world. Damien's voice was steel. How did he get in? Logan scanned the console. Julian knew where this safe house was. This was his father's design, after all. If he pre-installed a private surveillance channel before it was ever handed to you, then we've been monitored from the beginning. Damien's eyes were locked on the screen. Why not attack directly? Why the message? Because he wants you paranoid, Logan said. He wants to shake you, break your focus. He's using Lily to do it. Rachel's grip tightened around her daughter. We're leaving. We're not staying in this place another second. Damien nodded. Agreed. He gathered the drive, secured the laptop, and began flipping hidden switches beneath the desk. Protocol 8, Safe House Purge. Rachel blinked. What does that mean? Logan smiled grimly. It means we're making sure no one can use this place again. Damien hit the final command. A countdown started silently in the corner of the screen. 30 minutes until data wipe and structural lockdown. They moved fast. Lily was wrapped in a blanket. Rachel, carrying her as Damien and Logan gathered gear, emergency papers, untraceable credit. and another encrypted drive holding all the data from the previous drop, now updated with everything about Julian. They emerged into the garage. Logan swept the SUV for devices and found the blinking tracker lodged inside the rear camera. He crushed it underfoot. "New wheels," he said. "We'll use mine." Minutes later, they were speeding across the city in a dark sedan, unregistered, prepped for exactly this kind of emergency. Damien drove, his jaw clenched, eyes on the road. Rachel sat in the back, holding Lily, whispering soft reassurances into her hair. Logan sat beside Damien, watching the GPS feed fade behind them. "Where do we go now?" Rachel asked quietly. Damien didn't look back. "To end it." He handed Logan the drive. "You said he's still at that estate in France." "For now," Logan confirmed. "But he won't be for long. Once he knows we've gone dark, he'll assume we're coming." "Good," Damien said. "Let him prepare." Rachel's voice trembled. "And what happens when you find him?" Damien's hands tightened around the wheel. "I make sure he never threatens her again." Logan glanced at him. "Are you prepared for what that means?" Damien's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, at Rachel, at Lily wrapped in safety and fear. "Yes," he said. "For them, I'm prepared for anything." And as they crossed into open highway, far from the city and closer to the final reckoning, the first raindrops of a coming storm began to fall. 3 days later, they arrived in the French countryside under the cover of night. The estate loomed in the distance, a shadowed sprawl of stone and glass perched atop a hill like a throne. Surveillance confirmed it. Julian Vance was inside. His security was light, too light, as if he wanted Damien to come. They set up base in a secluded villa provided by one of Logan's old contacts. It was quiet, secure, and high enough to watch the estate from afar. Inside, Damien stood over the table, staring at satellite images and movement patterns. Rachel sat nearby holding Lily's hand, her body tense and silent. Logan paced, checking weapons, gear, digital comms. Rachel finally broke the silence. "You really think he wants you to come?" Damien nodded. "He's orchestrated every move. He's baiting me." "Then why go?" He turned to her. "Because sometimes the only way to stop a legacy is to confront it face to face." She looked at him, eyes glassy. "And if you don't come back?" "I will." She rose, stepping close, her voice trembling. "I can't lose you again." He brushed her cheek gently. "You won't." Later that night, after Rachel had tucked Lily into bed and kissed her goodnight for the 3rd time, Damien stepped outside. Logan was waiting by the car. "You sure you want to do this alone?" Logan asked. "Yes," Damien said, "but I need you close. If anything happens, if I don't come out, you know what to do." Logan nodded. "Get them out. Burn everything." They drove the winding road to the estate in silence. As they approached the gates, Damien got out, dressed in black, unarmed by choice. The gate opened without resistance. Inside the main hall, the estate was a study in quiet menace. Old Sterling family portraits hung beside unfamiliar faces, likely allies in Julian's twisted network. At the center of the room stood a man. Julian. He was slightly taller than Damien, leaner, with piercing gray eyes and a measured calm that sent a chill down Damien's spine. It was like looking into a distorted mirror, one built not by circumstance but by calculation. "Damien," Julian said, smiling. "Welcome home." Damien kept his voice cold. "You're not my family." Julian tilted his head. "Oh, but I am. Blood, legacy, purpose, we were forged in the same fire." "No," Damien snapped. "You were engineered. I was broken and rebuilt by truth. That's what makes us different." Julian stepped forward slowly. "And yet, here you are, exactly where I wanted you." Damien's eyes narrowed. "Then let's finish this." Julian's smile faded. "This isn't about you and me, it never was. This is about control. The world needs order, and chaos like yours threatens it." Damien took a step closer. "You touched my daughter." Julian's lips curved into a smirk. "I watched your daughter, but I didn't harm her. I needed you to feel it. Vulnerability. Now you understand what I've lived with every day." Damien's fists clenched. "You want me gone so you can rebuild." "But there's nothing left to rebuild. The world already knows." Julian leaned in, his voice like venom. "The world forgets, but I never will. You took everything. Now I take you." Damien stared him down. "No," he said. "You're going to lose." And in that moment, they both knew. Only one of them would walk out. Julian's smirk vanished. The air between them thickened, no more space for games or legacies, just finality. The silence stretched, sharp as a blade. Then, without warning, Julian lunged. But Damien was ready. He dodged the strike, slamming Julian into the wall with a force born not from training, but from something deeper. Fatherhood, love, years of betrayal compacted into a single moment. Julian recovered quickly, twisting free, launching a fist toward Damien's ribs. It connected hard. Damien stumbled back, gasping, but refused to fall. "This isn't about strength," he growled. "This is about who you are without someone pulling your strings." Julian's face contorted. "I am the legacy." Damien charged again, this time grabbing Julian by the collar and throwing him across the room. A table shattered under his weight. Breathing hard, Damien stood over him. "My daughter will never grow up in fear, never live under shadows. I won't let you do to her what our father did to us." Julian coughed, blood on his lip. "You think love wins? That exposing secrets ends it all? You've only cut off the head. The body remains." Damien's eyes burned. "Then I'll burn it all." Julian tried to rise, but Damien grabbed him again, pinning him down. "This ends tonight. You come near my family again, I don't report you. I erase you." Suddenly, a burst of light and noise erupted from the back of the estate. Logan. Julian's guards flooded in, but Logan was faster, neutralizing them with precision. Within seconds, the room was swarmed. Flashlights, commands, the sound of weapons dropping to the floor. Damien didn't move. Julian looked up at him, broken but smiling. "You'll never be free," he whispered. "There's always another secret, another piece you missed." Damien stood tall. "Then I'll keep digging." He turned to Logan. "Call the French authorities. Give them everything." Logan nodded, already dialing. Within the hour, Julian was in custody, charged not just for conspiracy and surveillance, but for international crimes tied to his father's network. The press exploded. The final files Damien had prepared were released. Julian's identity, the secret heir, the last remnant of a corrupt dynasty. The Sterling name was no longer a tower of power. It was a cautionary tale. Back at the villa, Rachel and Lily waited, holding each other close. When Damien walked through the door, bruised but standing, Rachel rushed to him, throwing her arms around his neck. Lily followed, wrapping herself around his waist. "It's over," he whispered, holding them both. Rachel looked up. "Really?" He nodded. "Julian's done. The truth is out." She cupped his face. "So what happens now?" Damien smiled through the ache. "Now," he said, lifting Lily into his arms, "we live in the open. No shadows, no legacies, just us." And as they stepped outside together into the golden light of morning, hand in hand, the wind carried away the last of the secrets. A family once broken, now whole. And finally, free.